Welcome to Seeing Scarlet. It's Shelby, and I'm here with a good friend, an old friend, and an old colleague of mine from the baseball days, Chris Edwards. He just so happens to be the play-by-play voice for a number of Duke sports, including some crossover with women's soccer. So it kind of just felt right this week for Texas Tech fans to get a little bit of insight on the number one overall Duke Blue Devils from someone I know knows them pretty well and better than I would, even though I've seen him play a few times living up this way. He knows them way better, so we're gonna let him give his insight on the team, the story, and all that. But welcome to the show, Chris. It's good to see you.
Shelby, great to see you. Thanks for asking me to do this. It's been a long time since we got a chance to work together,
It's been
so
too
it,
long.
it has been. So excited to be back on with you.
Yeah, we're
I got
excited
to
to
tell
have you.
you, I've
Yeah,
made
go.
one trip to Lubbock in my life,
Oh, let the
and
people
that
know.
was I've got some PTSD from the trip too.
Oh
I got to
no,
tell you.
maybe don't let the people know
No,
then.
it was no. Everything about the trip was fine. Lubbock is a phenomenal place. I
I
enjoyed my time there,
think I know where this is going, but
except
yes.
for except for the on the field. It was 2018. We lost a super regional in baseball to
Oh
Texas.
yes.
Yeah, we won. We lost the first game. And there was an umpire that blew a call at second base that I have not
Mm-hmm.
gotten over yet. And then we won game two, and then Texas Tech was clearly the better team in game three and deserved to go to Omaha. Stayed at this really nice hotel that was like right there at campus. I can't remember the
The
name of it.
Overton. The Overton.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, delightful.
Mm-hmm.
We went to this great steakhouse, and it was phenomenal. So I enjoyed my time in Lubbock, and hope I get to go back one day. But excited to see the Red Raiders in Durham this weekend.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, our fans will know that. I remember that game. Because yeah, I think I was still working. Yeah, that would have been 2018. I was still
Yeah,
working the same place that
yeah.
we knew each other from then.
Mhm.
So I remember that being something. But hey,
I'm
I'm personally glad that we won. I'm sorry that
I
holds such a painful spot in your heart still.
I'm
But
not gonna say the name of the umpire because it's somebody we both
you
know.
still.
We bet
Oh, is it
oh,
really?
oh,
We
yeah,
can talk about that off air.
we
I
will,
never
yeah.
paid attention to who the umpire was.
It
That's
was
funny.
it was a terrible call at second base, but
It
that
was.
that that umpire makes a lot of bad calls, so
I remember the call, so I remember it was bad. So,
yeah, anyway,
but anyway,
on to soccer.
soccer.
Not for
Hopefully,
your
we'll
time.
have some good officiating in Durham.
We
We've
will.
seen our fair share of rough officiating in Lubbock this year. Our soccer fans know. So hopefully, y'all got some good ones up here in Durham for the team. But we were talking a bit before we started, and in the story of this Duke team this year, they're the number one overall seed. They have a storied history, a storied coach in his final season, 31st season, in Robbie Church. But last year did not go how
Mm,
anybody wanted to go at Duke. It's
no,
not what Duke usually does. Didn't make the tournament for like the first time since 2014,
mhm.
something like that. And they've kind of rebuilt themselves. I've heard the stories about how everybody else is in the tournament. November, they're out there practicing every single hour they're allowed to practice in November. And then they bounce back and have this awesome season for Robbie Church, basically playing for him and themselves. And that's kind of how they've gotten to this point. But yeah, let people know kind of the story outside of that because I think it's a cool story.
It's such a great story, and let me just start by saying that Robbie Church is universally loved. Like, if you
Yes,
don't like Robbie Church or you don't love Robbie Church, you're the issue, right? Like, I've never
absolutely.
I've never met somebody in athletics that is as universally loved as Robbie, and just such a down to earth, humble guy. And I did their game early in the year, like their first home game. I think I forget who they played, Jacksonville, somebody like that. And we're talking before the match during our call, and I said, Robbie, like, take me through the decision, like, all this stuff. What were the emotions? And he's like, well, I didn't want to go out like that. He's like, I just couldn't go out not making the tournament. That couldn't be my last year. He's like, so let's run it back, as they say. Let's give it one more shot. And look, Robbie's got, I think, got kids that are in athletics, and grandkids, and he
Yeah,
wants to be at home more. I mean, he's done this for what, 30 something years. Like, he's earned it, right? And
for
obviously, with
sure.
the evolving landscape of college athletics, it's different for a lot of people, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of coaches have the longevity moving forward that people like Robbie have had in whatever
Hmm.
sport it is. So Robbie decided, this is going to be it. But he brought so much back from that team last year, and it's a group that has been together for so long. This senior class has worked together and been so good for so long. And I think the remarkable thing, Shelby, about this Duke team is the way they've reinvented themselves time after time this year. They had some preseason injuries, and Robbie's like, "Hey, I don't know how many more we can absorb." And then Cat Raider goes down, and Cat Raider was like, "What? Obviously, phenomenal freshman year, great sophomore year. What are the key goal scorers on this team?" And then, like, where does Duke go from here? Well, then they find a plethora of scorers, right? Like Maggie
Yeah.
Graham, who I think has had like 4 or 5 career goals, before
Mhm.
this year. It's like doubled that output this year. She's the team's leading scorer. And then in the first round game against Howard, Mia Menestrella with 4 goals in that game, like out of nowhere, right? And she's the first player in Duke history. How about this? To score 4 goals in a game, ties the NCAA record for most in an NCAA tournament game. I think somebody from Texas did it in the first round too. I know that's a bad word on this podcast,
It's
uh,
fine.
but me, I kind of out of nowhere, like she had scored 8, 9 goals, right? But to get 4 goals in an NCAA tournament game, unbelievable for the sophomore, right? So now Duke's got so many different scoring options. You can't just key on Maggie Graham or Mia Menestrelli. You've got so many other players that Duke can attack you with. And Robbie is really happy, I think, with this group overall. Leah Freeman, who's in goal for Duke, she's a second-year transfer from out in Oregon, and she came to Duke to play in the NCAA tournament. Didn't get that opportunity last year, and last week against Howard was her first ever NCAA tournament game. She's the first player in NCAA history, believe this or not, to be named the goalkeeper of the year in 2 different power conferences. Like Duke's been so prolific scoring. They've been really stingy defensively. And listen, they lost the first game of the season to Ohio State, then rattled off, 10, 12, 14 straight wins, something like that, a lot. And then they lost in the semifinals to North Carolina in the ACC tournament. 2-1, kind of tough one. And Robbie admittedly said, we were not happy. We wanted to be playing for a conference championship. And I was like, well, Robbie, maybe it's a good thing you get a little bit of rest. You can rest up going into the NCAA tournament. No, 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 no. He said that the training session that Sunday, the day where they were supposed to be playing for an ACC championship, had
Yeah.
they won, said it was intense. Said they were kicking each other. He said nobody was happy. It was a really intense training session, which is maybe a little odd this late into the season, right? But it shows the leadership that this senior class has provided, right? And I think, for Duke to be in this position and the number one overall seed for the first time in program history, which is kind of a wild thing to say, considering the players that have come and the teams that Duke has
Yeah,
had or that have gone to the
absolutely.
College Cup, the number one overall seed. And I don't know that anybody's super thrilled with the draw. I mean, Texas Tech's going to be is a tough second round opponent. They're a top 20 team, right? And then you get Texas or somebody else after that. Listen, it's really competitive, and
Yeah.
that's college sports across the board. But that's kind of a snippet, I think, of the Blue Devils. Like really, really solid club, not a lot of weaknesses. They can attack you in a bunch of different ways, and I think that they're going to obviously going to be a hard out because they're the number one overall seed, and uh,
Absolutely.
protecting this home turf is really important to these guys.
Yeah, I don't think anyone at Texas Tech is going into that game thinking it's not going to be a challenge. So, but I'm excited. And speaking of home turf, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but our head coach, Tom Stone, won a national championship at Duke for the men's
Really,
soccer team. He did.
what does that 1986
Correct. He scored the game-winning goal. So he's getting to take his team back to his
and
old stopping grounds. And
you,
Robbie Church, I believe, coached him when he was on the men's team. I guess Church he started a little bit
he's
on
like
the
an
men's team
assistant, yeah, because John
as
Rennie,
assistant. Yeah,
yeah,
he was not
John
the head
Rennie was the
coach.
head coach.
So,
And then to even bring it more full circle, John Kerr, who was
mhm.
on that team that won the 1986 national championship, is the head men's coach at Duke, and they just earned the number 10 overall seed in
And
the men's.
even more for full circle, Alex Kerr played for Texas Tech last season as a transfer from Vanderbilt, and it helped lead us to our
Mhm.
one of our most historic seasons ever. So there's all
Yeah,
sorts of fun storylines going on between these teams, and it's cool to get
and
them.
the,
So
and
I
I
know
was
he's very respectful of Robbie Church and the field and all that. He's very excited that they get the opportunity to go up there and play all
yeah,
that
and listen, like, Duke has been in this position before where they've had
for
home
sure.
field advantage throughout the NCAA tournament. I remember trying to remember the year 2022, maybe 21 or 22. They lost to Santa Clara and just in a heartbreaking fashion, kind of late in the
Yeah,
game, like, a game that would have got Duke to the College Cup. So some of those players were on that team back then. Like player like a Maggie Graham or someone like that. Like, yeah, it's just you remember those moments. And I mean, you've
yeah,
been at your athletics long enough. The losses stay with you a lot longer than the wins do. So
they do, they do.
it'll be fun on Friday night. I mean, it's going to be a great atmosphere. Weather looks great. It's going to be it's fun this time of year, right? Because like we've talked about this. I talked to Robbie about it last week. You get to the NCAA tournament, you know that the finality of the season is here. Like
Hmm.
any game could be your last game, and like can't take it for granted anymore. And that's why he likes the ACC tournament, is
Yeah.
because it's a one and done kind of game. You don't get that in the regular season, and you don't play everybody in the ACC now with the imbalanced schedule with all the teams, Stanford,
Hmm.
Cal, whatever. So you get a chance to see more teams, and you get a chance to get that one and done before you get to the postseason. And I think that certainly helps this Duke team. And listen, maybe a loss is not a bad thing for Duke, right? Like you
Yeah.
lose a game late, gives you a chance to reset. Like, wouldn't you rather lose a game in the ACC tournament than the NCAA tournament? Yeah, you absolutely would. So
Yeah, for
it's going to
sure.
be sad whenever the season ends because just Robbie is so well liked and everybody loves Robbie and is rooting for him. But hopefully the Blue Devils can get it done this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they don't, but I'm kidding. No, he's great. Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm just honored to get to see them in person, get to see them play up here at Duke as well. So it's gonna be a good time. But you talked about some of those players that were here in 2022, but talk a little bit more about Maggie Graham. Just this season, you
Mhm.
you kind of mentioned that hadn't really been a goal scorer for this team, but kind of some injuries, and she said, "Hey, okay, fine, I'll step up and do that." But she's also the midfielder of the year, I believe, in the ACC
He
as
is.
well.
Yeah.
So I know the games that I've watched, she just plays the right way, and I really enjoyed watching her play. Like she does the thing.
Yeah, and, she's a second, if you will, second generation Duke
Mm,
women's soccer player. Her sister Delaney Graham was
okay.
also an All ACC performer at Duke several years ago. Hold on, I'm pulling up my notes from the last game.
Oh,
Uh, so Delaney and Maggie are the ninth sister duo in ACC history to earn All League honors.
that's wild. What a
Yeah.
family.
How about that? Yeah, so I mean, you look at Maggie, who I think she had like what 8 career goals or something. The high water mark in her career was 4 in 2022. She scored 4 goals in 2022. Great year. She scored 12 this year. She had 10, then she scored 2 more against Howard. And just the way that she's working. Robbie talked about her before the game on Friday against Howard. Said she's the best player in college soccer. And like, of course, that's coach speak, right? He's sticking up for his player. That's what coaches are going to do. So she's best player in college soccer. Has always been good. Been a hard worker, but is a team first player. And this year has done a great job of stepping up her leadership and her composure. And now she's scoring at a high pace too. So not only you're getting this great midfielder, you're getting somebody that can help score, a team captain who's as we said has been through a lot of these battles and a lot of these wars. Graduate student. She was there in 2022 and they lost in the fourth round back-to-back years in 21 and 22 that Duke has lost in the fourth round. So, I mean, they're giving up 13 goals this year.
Yeah,
Like, that's it. I mean,
that's
that's
not a
it.
lot.
No, no. As we mentioned, like Leah Freeman, so good too, and then so many good players on the back end. And I was just so impressed too with Minestrella the other night. 4 goals, just
Yes.
out of nowhere too. Like she
Yeah.
scored a couple in the first half. You're like, oh, good, nice, and then she scored 2 more in the second half.
Yeah,
So
they were class goals too.
they
Like
were,
one
they
that
sure
I
were.
think it was the first one that was like because y'all were. I watched a good bit of the beginning of that game because it happened before Texas Tech was playing, so I had it on and it was like peppering that poor Howard goalkeeper.
And
I don't
she
know
was the
how
best.
they didn't score
There was like what in the first half, they like early in the game, they had like one off the crossbar, one off the post, one had
everywhere.
like pat away. I thought the keeper for Howard was their best player. They gave up 8 goals, but she was the
Yeah,
best player. I mean, she just got blitzed all night long.
she had to. I mean, they didn't really
Yes.
have the ball past midfield too much, which says a lot about the team. So, like, what would you say is this team's style of play? Is there a distinct one, or they just kind of do it in all different types of
I think
ways?
they could do it any way they wanted to. I
Yeah,
think they want to go. I mean, like everybody, they want to go forward. They don't want to just dump and chase, right? But
for sure.
they've got the speed, and I think that's how they can wear some teams down. They can play wide, they can play through the middle. I mean, they can do whatever they want to do, and that's kind of the hallmark of a good team, right? When
Mhm.
you've got so many like quality players. We haven't even talked about Hannah Bebar, who was second team All ACC, and Robbie was disappointed that she wasn't first team All Conference too, right? Like you've got all these players. Nikki Chico, who's kind of anchoring the defense, has done that for the last 4 years for Duke. Mia Olearo, the UNC transfer, second team All
She's
ACC.
fun.
She's a lot of fun. A lot
Yeah.
of fun. Like we're having this conversation, right? And we haven't mentioned like half of the players that have been impactful. And they use the bench really well. They've got some great subs that they use, and they can use parts interchangeably. I mean, they've probably got 15 or 16 players that could probably start for most every other team. I mean, a luxury to have for sure,
Yeah.
right? But I really think that if you're Duke, you're pleased with the first round, and they're taking it one game at a time. So to answer your question, it's a lot of different styles. You'll see
Yeah.
him play through the wings. You'll see him play through the middle. They did that a lot, I think, against Howard, both ways, right? And then they're really stingy defensively. They don't let you possess the ball for very long. You got to connect some passes. You got to build against this Duke team. You can't just throw it over the top and then go get it. Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't work against this squad.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's how you get to be the number one overall seed. You
Yeah,
can't play. You got to be able to play it multiple ways, and
sure.
different ways. Do you you talked a little bit about the beginning of the season, but both of these teams, ironically, started their seasons on the road at a Big Ten squad, and both of them lost, and then they kind of rebuilt their season from there. Do you remember that being any sort of talking point from this team after last season, all the work they put in to start, like, okay, and then we started with a loss, or was it just like, okay, that's not going to bother us, we're going to go and win 15 straight after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little. It's like, oh, okay, like a little disappointing, right? And
Yeah.
I remember talking to Robbie early in the season. He was like, we didn't play bad. We gave
Mm-hmm.
up a bad goal. We had some chances. They didn't play bad. They weren't super pleased overall. Obviously, you're never happy when you lose, but I think he was more pleased with the bounce back. Like they lost that one
For
nothing
sure.
game to Ohio State, had chances, just didn't score, and then to
Mm-hmm.
bounce back 3 4 days later, beat Nebraska, and then go on that long winning streak. I think for me where I started to be like, okay, yeah, something special when they beat North Carolina, that
Yeah.
fifth game into the season. Like that Tennessee game was canceled. They beat Carolina, who was number 2 team in the country, and we all know the prestige that
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina women's soccer has, and what Anson built there over his career is just remarkable with all the national titles. But to beat Carolina at home 1-0, and you're like, okay, yeah. Then they beat Virginia pretty handily, who was ranked, and then they go out west. And then they've got that road trip, 2 ranked teams. Stanford was number 7 at the time, Cal number 17, and you outscore them a combined 6-2 over those 2 matches. And you come back and you're like, holy smokes, like this team is cooking with gas now, right? And then to beat Carolina again, like on their senior day at Carolina, first time I think that Duke is the first.
Rivalry game. That was
Yeah,
a wild game. I watched it. Yeah.
Duke Carolina, like it doesn't matter if Duke Carolina play like tiddlywinks or if they go out and play like
Yeah.
Uno, right? It's Duke and Carolina, like it
We get
always.
it. It's
Yeah,
Texas Tech. That's
sure
for
it
our
is. Yeah,
fans.
like
Same kind of
same
vibes.
thing, same thing. And to do it at Carolina, I think, and I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right that Duke is the first team to beat North Carolina twice in the same season, and maybe
I
for
would
case,
believe that with
yeah.
their storied history. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think all of those things, like, but for me, like they lost the first game, and you're like, oh man, tough way to start your last year, right? And then they get hot and
Hmm.
they figured some stuff out. I don't know that there were any sweeping changes that Duke made after that first game. Robbie's not a
Nice.
guy that's going to be like, hey, let's reinvent the
Panic.
wheel after one
Yeah.
game. And I'm not, I don't think anybody's ready to make a declaration on anybody after 90 minutes. Listen, I think that the way that they responded, and they've obviously put together a really tough schedule. They're battle tested. So,
Yeah. I think I
yeah,
saw like the third hardest schedule
yeah,
in the country or something.
yeah,
That happens playing in the ACC though. There's a lot of obviously stalwarts out this way.
yeah.
So
I mean, it's the best league in the country.
for sure, you won't get any arguments from me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and it's that way not just in women's soccer, but in a lot of other sports too.
Yeah. It's very, very competitive,
Yeah,
and it's a little bit weird with the travel. That's a discussion
yeah,
for another time, but
yes,
I
it
don't know
is.
how y'all how handle that. That's got to be crazy. But at any rate, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, great season with them. This one might we can maybe finish it off with this,
yeah.
and it might be a little bit tough for you to answer because again, you don't. I don't think you were saying you're not sure if you're going to be calling this game or
I
not. So you might
don't
not.
know yet. You might hear my voice. You may not. I don't
Yeah,
know.
y'all will be very happy if Chris gets to call this game.
Well,
Texas Tech fans that aren't going to be able to travel, but he does a great job. But if not, so you might not have gotten a chance to look up Texas Tech too
I,
much yet.
I
So you
have
might
not
not know
not
the
done a
answer
lot
to
of.
this. But
Yeah, give me the overview of the Red Raiders.
oh, you want that? I mean, it's an interesting story. I mean, that's a long thing. But yeah, basically, we have had injury issues too. We lost our All American 2 days before the season. Had to regroup from that. We lost a couple of pro players that graduated from last year's three pro players that graduated from last year's team came in. Another one of our All Americans couldn't play until about the fifth or sixth. Macy Blackburn. If you call the game, you're going to be reading a lot about Macy Blackburn. She is the defender of the year in the Big 12, but she just has great service as well. She's just a great player. We had a player breakout as well. Taylor Sherdesky came in out of high school, was the all-time leading like goal scorer in Texas high school history when we signed her a few years ago. Had an injury issue, really didn't get to really get back from that. It was a tough freshman injury. She's a redshirt sophomore this season, has scored 10 goals. And those are all 10 of her career goals this year to lead us. And same thing. So, like, our two leading scorers this year had one combined goal coming into the season,
Wow,
career goal,
wow.
because of all the injuries we've had. We've had a number of them. And so, similar to what you're saying, I just think then y'all have the depth of the seniors and all the talent, too. That you talked about, that depth of talent might be the difference. But there's some really cool stories on this team that you'll get to know and like to play from the outside. There's a lot of stuff you're saying. We've only allowed 14 goals on the season, I
Okay.
think, 13. I think you'll have
And
scored some more.
tough first road game with LSU too. Like that's a tough
Yeah,
first
that
road.
was yeah, I don't think we were super happy with that draw, like, just feel like to get it as a host and get an SEC opponent, but also I think they were excited to prove it because,
Yeah.
anyway, they've had some tough breaks this season and
It
stuff,
just means
so
a little more, you know?
yeah, it just means a little bit more, and so they've played pretty physical, tried to bully us a little bit, and it didn't work. So that was fun to get to watch them do that. So yeah, I think this team is they're very competitive, they're very talented. And there's some pro players on it for sure. And it's been a really cool season. Like we talked about it last week on our show, but I'm just like really proud and really like I've really enjoyed the journey because they started with like a 4-0 loss to Penn State
Mhm.
because it came 2 days after they lost their all American, and she was set to go. She was going to play for the Sam Courtwright's her name.
Yeah.
She was going to play for the U.S. Youth National Team, so we were going to miss her for a chunk of the season anyway. But she was supposed to be here at the beginning and got hurt a couple days before, and then we lost an outside back as well, and so she wasn't playing either. And she's all Big 12, and it was just a big reshuffling moment for that poor team. And they've kind of built their way back up from that, and now they're kind of just getting it together and doing the best they can. And they're having I mean, for all the things that happened, I think they've had a pretty impressive season, all things together. And then Tom Stone, 18th season, he's kind of built this program from nothing. I mean, it was a cellar dweller when he
Mhm.
took over, an instant success. And we already talked about his ties to Duke, so there's a lot of cool storylines here too, for
I
sure.
hope I get
But
to call this game because it's so many
yeah,
good stories, and, you know,
yeah, there's some really fun players on Texas Tech team. Like if you get to call the game and you need some, just give me a call and
I
I'll
got
give you the
you.
full rundown. But it would take a long time to go through all of them. But it was similar to what you were saying. Like a lot of different players had to step up this year for this team, and
But that's the
our
case with every team.
and our goalkeepers a transfer as well from UCLA.
So, I mean,
So
it's very similar. Like, I think once you get to this point in the season, every team is like onions, right? You've got so many
yep,
layers to it, and you just peel back those layers because everybody's got a story. You know, doing these games, it's fun to call the games. I enjoy the prep a whole lot more, just finding these cool
yeah,
stories, cool nuggets, and telling these stories about these kids because, you know, as we said, everybody's got a story. Everybody comes from somewhere.
yep.
So
That's that's
that's
what
the best
Seeing
part.
Scarlet's about. Like we're all about the stories, the stats, and whatever. We leave that to the coaches. They can do the
Yeah,
breakdowns and all that, but we're here for the story. So yeah,
we
if
are.
you end up getting to call a game, I can. I'm sure the tech media team will give you the whole
Yeah,
rundown too. I can give you all sorts of stories. We've been following them all year, and there's some really neat stories on this team. But that was kind of the heavy hitters. But
that's awesome.
yeah,
So
you
I
have to
can't
love
give
this
you a
team.
prediction because I haven't looked at the
Yeah,
red.
I was gonna say, but more so, I was just gonna ask, which might it could have nothing to do with Texas Tech, but like if Duke is gonna win, like what is gonna happen if Duke's gonna win? Like
Uh,
their style of play, like they're
yeah,
gonna just do what they do.
they're gonna have to dictate the tempo and the pace. I think they're gonna have to play their style of game. And I think for Duke, they got to score somewhat early, right? Like I don't think as the number one overall seed, any team playing at home, you don't want to get behind early. Probably the same for Texas Tech, right? But
Yeah,
if you're thinking about pressure, I always think in games like this, like if you're the number one overall seed or you're the host, like
yeah,
you're kind of expected to win. So I think if Duke can find a way to jump out and score early, that really helps them because
for
then they
sure.
can relax a little bit. They can play from in front. So I think that first goal is really crucial. But I also think for them, like they just got to do what they've been doing all year. You know, you can't let the moment get too big. And I think that's where those seniors are going to come in and really help
For
Duke.
sure.
These players that have been through these wars and been on the precipice of a college cup a couple of times. If Duke can score early, I like their chances to win.
Yeah. Yeah, I think both teams probably have that same that isn't that every
Yeah,
soccer coach's
that's
plan to
focus, yeah,
score early. But
score
yeah,
early.
I always say with Texas Tech, the first 20 minutes are really important for this team. And if they get through the first 20 minutes with the lead or tied, they always have a chance to get it done. But I think that's every soccer coach probably says the same thing.
For
So
sure.
but yeah.
A lot of coach speak here
Yeah,
from
but it's just like I mean, it's the same way that the first 20 minutes in soccer can be frenetic because
yes.
teams like especially teams like in the postseason when we've never I mean, when's the last time Duke and Texas Tech soccer played? I don't even
No
know.
idea.
I don't know if we have. Maybe we have, but I don't we played North Carolina last year in Lubbock in the Sweet 16, but we've never played Duke. I'm sure we have at some point, but moral of the story is we don't know each other. It's
Right,
not
yeah,
like playing Big 12 teams that know
sure.
your exact style, and Texas Tech has a kind of a unique style, and I'm sure Duke does as well, and they're gonna have to like scout each other out in those first 10 minutes. It's always fun, like to be like, okay,
Yes.
who actually scouted the best and can win those
Well,
first ten
you know,
minutes?
listen, you can scout all you want to, but players gotta make the plays. Like, you can
Yeah,
scout a game plan
exactly.
all you want to, but the players gotta play.
That's what I'm most excited for is the stars in this game to see how they match up. Because yeah, Duke has a ton of them. I think there's probably at least one All American on each of these teams. There
Uh-huh.
should be, so it'll be fun to
Agreed.
watch. But
Be a
yeah,
lot of fun.
I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully that gives Texas Tech fans a little bit of insight into who we're playing. I believe the game is at 6:30 Eastern,
6:30, yes.
5:30 Central on ESPN Plus. You can watch it. Sneak it in before all the other sports happening this week. I know it's a busy sports weekend for Texas Tech. I'm sure Duke as well, but
Yeah,
get it in
always.
there. Turn the TV on. Maybe you'll see Chris. Maybe you'll see somebody else. But that was a great breakdown. I learned some new things. Hopefully
Well, there
they
you
will
go.
as well.
I'm glad it was helpful, Shelby. It was great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. And well, we usually end things with a rectum, but I'll just say bye this time. I won't make you throw a guns up. So we'll see you around next time.
See you, Shelby. Thanks.